This meeting is being recorded.
Well, great. Well, thank all of you for coming today. I know your time's valuable, and we appreciate your taking an hour of your day to join us. We wanted to welcome you to the South Carolina State Library. We're doing a Discover the South Carolina State Library webinar series, trying to share a little bit more about what we have and what you can contact us or visit us to do research with our collections. And so today we were going to talk about researching military history, and really it's about researching your military ancestors from South Carolina. Hannah Majeski is the lead presenter, and she has organized all this wonderful information. So thanks, Hannah, for doing this. And she is the authority. So my name is on there to contact, but and I'm glad to help, but I might recommend you speak to Hannah afterwards. If any of y'all have questions later and you want to reach out to us. So let's see, we both work in one of the departments in the state library, library collections and services. So we do public outreach, reference and research services, and we also maintain the collections in this department. So we do a lot. It's really interesting work. We are recording today's session, and if you have that little Zoom bar down at the bottom, there's an ellipsis, and you can choose to have subtitles and view the live transcript. So that's an option to get closed captioning on the recording. And all of you are welcome to turn on your cameras, and if we get any feedback while we're giving the talk, I might mute you if somebody walks in your office, or if you get a phone call or something like that. Let's see. And like I said, we're this is the third webinar we're doing in this series, and the next one we would love for you to join us is August 4th, and reference librarian Don Mullen is going to talk about the various South Carolina legislative resources we have. It's one of the most extensive collections in our area, in our collections, and it's print materials going back to when South Carolina became a state around 1790. So some are reprints and some are originals, and a lot of people do research in this area. So we would love to have you, and love to just share what's there that you can come access. And another thing we wanted to share with you is that all of you that are South Carolina citizens and you're 18 years and older are welcome to get a state library card. And all you have to do is register online by going to this this link, and we will mail your card to you, and you can do research with the electronic resources like the newspapers, Newsbank, and ProQuest that you would have access to remotely. And then a lot of the materials we are covering today, you might have to come visit, or you just call us and we can look some items up for you. There are lots more things you can use with your state library card, like ILL, interlibrary loan, getting articles and books through us. So it helps if you're not affiliated with a college. And I'm going to turn it over to Hannah. She's going to start to share all the things that we're going to cover today. And if y'all have any questions, we might be able to answer it along the way, but feel welcome to put your questions in the chat, and I will monitor that, and we might answer a lot of them at the end. We're going to leave time for questions and answers, so please feel welcome to put any information you have or speak up. Thank you. It's all yours, Hannah.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? If you'll just, okay, got a yes from Virginia, so that's great. Yeah, I am so excited to be giving this presentation today. What you see on your slide there are some of the military resources related to South Carolina and the United States. These are some of the materials that we have in our collection. We have on our website, we have a genealogy resources LibGuide, a historic South Carolina collection of books, of documents. We have historical newspapers. We have that on our website. Ancestry Library Edition, Fold 3, and Heritage Quest. If you see those, they have an asterisk beside them. And the reason they have an asterisk beside them is because those particular resources are not available to the public through our library. Now, your local library may have them, but through the state library, it's only available to the reference librarians. So if you have a question, we are able to go into the library, into those references and do some research for you. Let's see. I think Virginia has already sent out the genealogy resources guide. Have you done that? You put a link out into the chat for that?
I haven't. I can send it again.
Okay. And just to let you know that for the South Carolina collection and historical newspapers, in order to access the historical newspapers on our website, you do need to have a library card. It was called Newsbank, and you do need to have a library card in order to access all those papers. So let's see. If you'll go to the next slide for me, please. And these are some secondary resources related to South Carolina history or in U.S. history that you may want to reach out to as well. South Carolina Department of Archives, they have a website where you can actually enter information on a link in their website, and it can pull up information. The South Carolina Census gives great information. National Archives, Find a Grave, county museums, and local genealogy groups. So it's some of these places can be a little overwhelming to go into and research, but if you ever have any questions, I'm not going to say we're fluent in it, but we are able to go in and help you do research or be able to refer you to someone over there that would be able to help you, like over at the Archives and History. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I want to let you know how the State Library got involved in military research. So a couple of years ago, we had a citizen from the Netherlands call us who was searching for a photo of a soldier their family had adopted from the Margraten Cemetery. And keep in mind, the Dutch, if you didn't know this, the Dutch adopt the graves of American soldiers buried at Margraten and maintain the headstone. And what they do is they also place flowers there, and they actually celebrate these soldiers for their sacrifice in liberating their town during World War II. We discovered there was an organization over there called the Fields of Honor organization, and that was attempting to find photos of all the buried soldiers in that particular cemetery. So what we did was the organization reached out to us and asked if we would be willing to research photos of the South Carolina soldiers who were buried over at Margraten. And of course, we were more than happy to. It was a great honor for us to do this. And once we got involved, they had only found a handful at the time we got involved. At this point now, we've helped find over 50% of the soldiers, or 50% of the photos of soldiers who are buried over there. Of course, we have also agreed to reach out and find pictures of soldiers from other states, which we have been successful in doing that as well. So in this particular presentation, when I'm going to show you some website links and pictures. There's one soldier in particular that I'm going to use as a reference. So his name is going to be Preston Marvin Waldrop, and I'm going to show you how I went and found some information on Marvin as I was researching. Okay, if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so many of you, I'm not sure if you're familiar with search, and some of you are very familiar, I'm sure, but a lot of times the way I have figured out and the way I work is I work backwards. Is that in that way I start with what I currently have and go backwards with trying to find who my ancestors are. So I start with my parents' name, and then I go to my grandparent, my great-great-grandparent, and so on and so forth. once you find your ancestor's name, there are several places to search, and we'll go into those in just a few minutes. Although it may not seem like a lot to have just your parents' or your grandparents' name, it is a lot of information you can research and find. It's a great place to start. Knowing your grandparents' name or finding out from other family names is the first way to start your journey. So obituaries is one way it's a great place to start to find information. So if your grandparents or even your parents aren't alive, or your great-great-grandparents, if they have an obituary, you usually find the names of other family members who are in that obituary. You may find names of cousins, you may find names of uncles and aunts. And a lot of times you'll also find out where these people are residing. So you may not know you had an uncle who lived in Atlanta, or you may not know that you had a cousin who is living in North Carolina. So this is a great way to start, to at least get you started on the path for the research. Okay, Virginia, thank you. Move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is called findagrave.com, and it often has obituaries and family and ancestry names in it. So I'm going to start my research on a soldier. Like I said, his name is Preston Marvin Waldrop from South Carolina, and he served in World War II. He was killed in action in 1944 and is buried at the Margraten Cemetery in the Netherlands. At the time I had Marvin's name, I had no information except all I had was his name, and I think I had his date of death. And he died in 1944. So what I did was I started with findagrave.com, and I entered in his name and see if I could find out any historical background, any biographical background on him. And right here I have a screenshot of what Find a Grave, the homepage of Find a Grave, looks like. So, and it's kind of hard to see, but I have entered Preston Marvin Waldrop in the year 1944 for the year of his death. And then I hit the search button at the bottom, and that took me to the next page. And this is Marvin's profile page on findagrave.com. And you see he has a picture there and his name, and it has his birth date, his death date, and it has a bunch of information. It's kind of hard to see because the screen is small. But if you look down there, I have an arrow, I have a red arrow, and it's pointing to Marvin's siblings. And I also have circled his siblings, and I also have circled his family, his parents. These links where the arrow is pointed to are live links. If you click on them, you'll be able to go to that particular person's profile page on findagrave.com. So I didn't really have a lot of information on Marvin. I just knew he was killed in action in 1944, and from here I could see his birth. But at that time, I wanted a picture of Marvin. And just to kind of let you know, this picture here of Marvin is the one I found and submitted to Find a Grave so they would have it up there for him. But at the time, there was no picture. And so I wanted a picture of Marvin. So what I did was I found one of his brothers or siblings, or his brother or sisters, one of the ones who had died the most recent. And his name was Franklin Hubert Waldrop. And so what I did was I clicked on his name and I went to the next page. And here's Franklin's write-up on findagrave.com. And so this is Franklin, and he is kind of blurry. I hate to show you that, but it's kind of blurry. But it lists when Franklin passed away and his surviving family and where they're from. And what I did was when I saw these family names and where they're from, I went to whitepages.com to try and find the family members based on their location in the obituary. I was able to send letters to those family members to see if they had any photos or any information about Marvin that they'd be willing to share. So again, going back and looking at obituaries is a great way to find family connections. Okay, Virginia, next slide, please. And going back to the original slide here, this is Franklin's information. If you see down there at the bottom where the red arrow is, you see Preston, Marvin, and Waldrop. So his name is listed in Franklin's list of siblings. And if you aren't able to find any information there, a lot of times, excuse me, you'll see a spouse name. And I do have Franklin's spouse listed up there. So if the spouse is still living or if a spouse name is not listed there, sometimes you can reach out to them if their name is in the obituary. Okay, so that's just a little brief overview about researching through findagrave.com. You find a lot of information there, and that's just one resource of the many that we're going to talk about for you to reach out and try to find your family members. Another research avenue is the National Archives. They maintain military history from as far back as the Revolution. You can find a lot of information that can be overwhelming, especially when you get deep into the information online. However, let's continue with our research on Marvin and just see what kind of information National Archives has on him. I'll at least show you the basics of researching National Archives. So this is the homepage for National Archives. And if you're wanting to research military, you can see they have a tab at the top. It's called Veterans Service Records, and that's where I would click on to begin. There are two things I want to show you on this page. Here you can research or request military records. On the left-hand side, you see an arrow, and it's pointing to request military. There are some guidelines on who can request military information. A lot of times it has to be a family member, but if it's less than 62 years, the information provided to the public is limited except to family members or the service member themselves. Records made public 62 years after they leave the military. So if you don't see a lot of information, it could be because the time frame has not expired or has expired to allow this information to go online. There are several options for researching military records, and the one I found best was what's available online link. It's over here on the right-hand side under the box, researching using military records. So what I did was I clicked on what's available online. And it took me to this page, and it's called On This Page, and you see a bunch of all the different military documents. But on this right-hand side in this box, you'll see a variety of different wars and conflicts that are available for you to research. So because I'm searching Marvin, who served in World War II, I'm clicking on the World War II link, the active link there shown by the arrow. Okay. So here we are, it's pulled up the World War II era. And you can find, here you can see, you can find casualty records, prisoner of war records, photos, and World War II Army enlistment records. The AAD is an acronym for Access to Archival Databases. So I want to find Marvin's military records. So I click on Search ADD for these records, and that's where the arrow is pointing. And you're brought to this page, and you're going to click on the World War II. However, notice all the different types of breakouts that you see here. You see National Archives has set up time spans, indexes, places, government spending. Their website is absolutely huge and massive. So I click on the World War II. And here you can search the World War II Army enlistment records. On this page, you can see the total number of enlistment records for World War II, and you can also see the number of records for prisoners of war, Japanese Americans, and many more. We're going to click on the electronic Army serial number merge file and see if we can, there we go, thank you. So we're going to search Marvin's name to see what kind of information we can find. No, you can also include additional information such as the soldier's serial number, if you have that as well. The more information you have, the more it's going to be able to specify the soldier that you're looking for. So, excuse me, in our search, we don't have Marvin's serial number. The only thing we have is his name. So what I did was I placed his name in, starting with last name first, and then first name, and then middle name. Now, keep in mind that whenever you search any type of Army records, even if the person went by their middle name, the Army is always going to use their first name. And keep in mind too, you see here that you have to put a pound sign in between the last name, the first name, and the middle name. So I have Waldrop, pound sign, Preston, pound sign, and M, pound sign. That's what's required. And then I hit my search button. Okay, well, here it brings up just one Preston Marvin or Preston M. Waldrop. And on the right-hand side, you can click on the view record icon to access his record. And here we go with a bunch of information about Marvin. You'll find out information such as his state of residence, place of enlistment, date of enlistment, his year of birth, and among a bunch of other information as well, his age, anything else, and what he did before he joined the military. So this is a good information too of what else you can find, some other information that can help you in your research. Okay. So just to kind of stop and regroup here, we've searched Find a Grave and we've searched National Archives. So we have just a few more places to research, and the next one's going to be newspapers. So I'm sorry, Ancestry.com. My bad, Ancestry, not newspapers. So if you go to Ancestry.com, if you have the paid subscription for it, you're used to seeing this if you've never seen it before, and this is going to be kind of new to you. It's a fairly easy access for Ancestry. Now, there's two types of Ancestry. There's Ancestry.com, and then there's Ancestry Library. And the difference between those two versions is that the library edition, I can't upload documents or photos. That's the only difference. Whereas Ancestry.com, you can. Ancestry Library, you cannot. It can't be personalized. Any of the information I put on there can't be personalized. However, all the information available, such as census records, military records, Social Security records, death indexes, we have those. City directories, maps are available on Ancestry.com through the library. You can download documents from the library edition to your own computer. And we're going to continue our research on Marvin as well. So what I'm going to do is down here at the bottom, it says search military, where the red dot is, or where the red arrow is. So Virginia, if you'll click that for me. Okay, and this is what it looks like on the next page. We have military records, and we enter Marvin's name as much as we know about him. So I entered Preston Marvin for his first name and Waldrop for the last name. And I entered his death year is 1944. Okay. And it pulls up a bunch of records from Marvin. And if you look closely, you'll see that Preston or Marvin, who we've been researching, is a junior. And I did not realize that until I came to Ancestry.com. So got to make sure that when you're searching for men, that you check and make sure that they're not a junior, because you may be getting on the wrong path if you're looking for military information. But here are a few records from Marvin. If you look down, we see a U.S. Headstone and Internment record for U.S. military buried overseas. And down there with that little red arrow is, you'll say, it says view. Now, if there's not a view option down there, then there's nothing, there is no record attached to that file. But this one does have an attachment. So I clicked on the view, and it brought up Marvin's headstone, inscription, and interment record. So this was the document that was sent to his mother, who lived in Invery, South Carolina, and it includes information such as the inscription that was written on his headstone, where his grave is located at Margroton. And at the time, and I think the military still does this, you're offered either a cross or a Star of David. And you see over there on the right-hand side, there's a box that says Star, SOD, which is Star of David, or a cross. So Marvin has a cross, and a lot of people find out that there may be some Jewish heritage in their background. So they may be surprised to see that there is a Star of David. But in this particular case, that's just something I want to bring out to you, that Marvin had requested a cross. So if we go back, and then another option we saw is this, which is his draft card. And you see at the top, he has written Junior, just to make sure the clarification between his father and him. This is Marvin's draft card. It's not always available, but many times it is. The Ancestry isn't the only genealogical website available. We can also find this very similar information on heritagequest.com and fold3.com. There's also another, familysearch.org is a wonderful reference option. It's free, and you gather a lot of information from that as well. So people who out there who aren't able to afford Ancestry.com or want to be able to create their own documents, they can go to familysearch.org. And again, it's free, and you're able to create your own genealogical tree, your own genealogical family as well. So we see here that Marvin's from Spartanburg, and you just get a lot of information. Again, it has his date of birth, what he did as a civilian. He was a textile worker, and his age and when he was born. So this is a good resource for you as well. But that's just a brief overview of the National Archives. We're going to move on now to Newsbank, and we have articles from over 600 US newspapers and over 20 South Carolina newspapers, including the State and the Post and Courier. Again, these are on a database in our website, and in order to access these newspapers, you do need to have a library card in order to access it. Or if let's say you're not in the state of South Carolina, if you're out of state, you can call us or reach out to us, and we'll help you do the research in our newspapers for you. That's not a problem. Okay. So when you go to Newsbank, here's a front page of the newspaper, so to speak, and you see a couple of arrows. One allows you one arrow points to where you can enter your search information. That's the very top arrow. And then it's always best to use quotation marks around your search topic. So for example, I am going to research Preston Marvin Waldrop. And when I put his name in that white block, I will put his name in quotations. However, because I have additional information, I can always do a search by date as well, or even map, but I'm going to do a search by date. So go to the next slide, please. So here on this page, I put in quotation marks, Preston Marvin Waldrop, and I put the year 1944. And what I'm hoping is going to pull up is any records on Marvin that may have been in the newspaper. And when I did this, I did not find any type of records from Marvin. I tried Preston M. Waldrop. I tried Marvin Waldrop. I tried all sorts of ways to get any type of news article on Marvin. Now, because a lot of times the newspapers were so small in some counties, we may not have access to those newspapers. We usually have access to just the broader newspapers. So if this was in a little town's newspaper, we would not have access to it. So based on the newspapers that we subscribe to, I could not find any information on Preston Marvin Waldrop in the newspapers. So in order to do this, what I did was I just typed, okay, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Virginia, I'm sorry, go back one. What I finally did was I just typed in the word Waldrop in 1944 for the date. And then that way I was able to bring up some articles on Marvin. You can see that his name is mentioned in several articles, and you can click on the article and read the entire article as well. Some articles do contain photographs. None of the ones from Marvin did, but we did find several articles in the newspaper during our research for these Margraten soldiers that did have a photo. And here's one here. His name is Thomas Yarborough, and he was killed in 1945. And what we found, his obituary with his photo was in the newspaper, and his photograph and his obituary gave a lot of information about his background. It, excuse me, it gave information such as when he enlisted, he attended officer candidate school, he went to combat on D-Day, where he attended high school, he received the Bronze Star and the Silver Star. And a really sad thing, he had been wounded and he had gone back into action only one day after recovering from his battle wounds before he was killed. So that's a lot of good information just to know about your ancestry. Another soldier we researched was Clifton Dover, and he was killed in 1944. We couldn't find any articles with his photo, but this particular obituary here gave us a lot of information that we could take and go and research. For example, it showed where Clifton was from. It shows his wife's name. It also showed that he was a Clemson. He attended Clemson, and his daughter's name is in there as well. His in-laws' name, his parents' names, and his siblings' names. So even though Clifton was killed, you may be able to reach out and search some of the brothers' names in that area. So for example, he was from Rock Hill. A lot of the times a family comes back from the war and they go back to the area where they resided. Many times they have moved, but a lot of times I noticed that when I was researching, they usually stayed in the same area where they were from. And so what I did was I would just, again, go to whitepages.com, type in the brother or sister's name, and cross my fingers and hit search, and hopefully it would bring up someone local. And that's how I was able to find a lot of connections, is by simply looking at obituaries in the newspaper. I will say this as a side note that Clemson has a scroll of honor. If you're not familiar with that, any of the students who were at Clemson who went into the Army or the military and were killed while serving, their name is listed on Clemson's Scroll of Honor on their website, and you can find out more information on that as well, and that's at clemson.edu. So now we're just going to go into, we've searched Newsbank and Find a Grave and Ancestry and all that. So what's left to research? We have some information here. So we have books in our collection, and we have other locations where you can reach out and do some research. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Virginia and let her wrap up our discussion today.
Pardon me, I started talking and I was still muted. Thanks, Hannah. That was really interesting to see all the different details of what you can find in the newspapers, the archives, and various places. So we wanted to also show you what's available through the state library print resources that we have. And we have a variety of published works on all the different wars. Some of it's on military personnel and on the various wars and battles soldiers fought in. Let's see. And I'm going to start with the American Revolution and what we have on that. And I think I mentioned earlier, let's see, Miss Ryan said she's a DAR researcher. One of the volumes that we keep close to reference is the South Carolina Patriots in the American Revolution. And it has some wonderful entries. People call from all over and we look up the last name and tell them for Smith or whatever the name is, we can look up and say, okay, here were some soldiers who served and are documented in various records for the Revolutionary War. And there's also and I'll show you an entry in just a moment. There's also one document called the Stub Entries to Indents, and that's all of and we have a full collection of that. So if one of the references in the Patriots book mentions that they were paid and it's in the Stub Indents, we can also look in that volume and see what their entry is. And that, if you're doing DAR research, that is a really helpful thing that you can document that person and we can provide some of that information. And so here is that Patriots in the American Revolution. Hannah pulled one on Francis Marion that everybody's familiar with, and the types of information that you would find in one of these small entries. It's just packed with information. So if you didn't already know the person's birth and death dates, who they had married and when, what their service was, who they served with, battles they fought in. And then they are the Mr. Moss, who wrote the book and put all this research together for us. He is referencing particular sources. So this SCH&G volumes and pages is the South Carolina Historical and Genealogy magazine. And we are fortunate to have a full run of that in our collection. So that's another thing we could, once we get this reference, we can go over to those print records and get a citation for you for that. And I'm not familiar with what the yearbook is. Y'all might know what that is. But say that came up, then I would, educate myself. I'd try to find out who would have this this yearbook, and I'm sure it's about the Revolutionary War. And then the NA is National Archives. I think this is the microfilm reel that they are referencing that Francis Marion had, and that may be a pension record or something about the war. So it's a wealth of information, and there are many. It has an index in the beginning of this work of what these references mean, and then we can try to help you find that information in other places. A couple of other publications that we have access to, and we don't own the only copy that exists, but we are lucky that we have them in our collections, are the accounts audited of Revolutionary claims. So if someone did a pension request later in life, we have information on those, and there's other places you can look in Ancestry and actually read the claim, that sort of thing. But this gives you some wonderful information. And the state archives has digitized quite a few of these. I'm sure it's an ongoing project, but it's in their online records index that you would be able to search and see if your person's name is in there. We also have slightly later war, but we've got the index to U.S. Invalid pension records, 1801 to 1815. That might have been when people were applying for their pensions. And we've got Civil War records. There's some official records that we're lucky to have. So some are in our South Carolina collection, and I believe some might be in other areas like federal collections. One is the War of the Rebellion official records. And this was a series of documenting the war, and it can include soldiers' names who served. And you might find both Caucasian and African American soldiers in all of this information, because African American soldiers did serve as well. And they've got entries of field notes, letters, activities in the war that happened in these books. This is an area I'm still learning about. I'm not an expert, but if you called us, we would figure it out, and we would go pull some of these and try to find it for you. Another local person spent years collecting information on South Carolinians who were either in the artillery or the cavalry during the Civil War. And it's called "And Were the Glory of the Times." And he has very rich biographical records about all the people that he was able to find and document. This one's a little fuzzy to read, but it says William Henry Hatchell was a private. He served in Company E. He was a 30-year-old farmer in 1860 in Darlington District in South Carolina. And it tells how he talks about his family, what his service was like, and where he served, battles that he was in. So just an extremely rich document. We keep this in our ready reference, that we're always glad to pull this item if you came in or if you wanted to call us and ask us for help. And here's another item that you might have heard before called Dark Hours. And it's all of the, pardon me, I'm looking at my notes. It's all of the prisoners of war from South Carolina, and they could be, it says soldiers, sailors, and citizens who were held in U.S. prisons during that time. And so just another great resource where we would be able to look up a person's name. Say you had a family story, or you saw a mention in a record that somebody had been a prisoner of war. This might be a great place to check, see what the sources they are referencing, and help you get onto that next step. So name, rank, regiment, where the person was captured, and what, the date of capture, the prison where they resided, if they were moved, their disposition, and the resources that they found in between 1861 and 65. And an author and researcher came in the other day, and he was looking for somebody in Abbeville, and was like, oh, we need to check and see if that was mentioned in there for him. So one of the largest parts of our collections are state documents, and they can be a wealth of information. So we have the Attorney General's annual reports, and they have some Civil War records and noting individuals, their rank, and where they served and at what time during the Civil War. So they must have gone backwards and did some research retrospectively. These are easy for us to go up and get for you. I think this is on our genealogy guide on military records that I've sent a link a couple of times. I'm glad to do it again. If you joined us late, I mentioned that there were African-American Confederate pensioners. Dr. Walter Curry talks about his great-grandmother Plus, who served as, I think, a cook in the Confederate Army. She's from South Carolina, and she applied for and received a pension in the 1920s. So I think that's a wonderful example. But people did serve, and that's a item that we have. And the person that wrote it is one of the archivists out at the State Department of Archives. So she was around these records and decided to compile all this rich information for us. We have a publication, The Roll of the Dead, of people that were killed from South Carolina, a roster of Confederate soldiers. A couple of these, I think this one has been digitized and is on scmemory.org that you could look through. This is one we just mentioned, and we have a state document guide, Confederate military records, and what's at the State Department of Archives, what you might find there. They're only about 10 miles away from us, so it's a place if you were coming from out of town that you'd also be able to visit the archives who has original records. And then we have all sorts of, some of it's primary source information and some of it's secondary sources. You have memoirs, like a Confederate nurse diary, Ada, I'm going to say Bacot, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Civil War letters, the annual reports from the Adjutant General, and reminiscences. So this is just a couple of examples of a very extensive collection we have on the Civil War. Some of it is just research, and some of it, like I said, is primary information that got published. We have some information on Spanish-American War. Our library has been able to collect things over many decades, and so this South Carolina troops in the war with Spain has photographs and name and regiment information for soldiers where they were from. So that can be a really cool one, and it's, it's not a war you think about very often, but many of our ancestors did serve in these wars, these lesser known wars. Got a lot of great things on World War I. Everybody doing okay? If y'all have any questions, please put them in the chat, and thanks, Emily. Feel welcome to unmute yourself and ask. We're almost to the end. I just wanted to be able to share that with you. So here's a rich resource that's actually digitized, and on our website we have an online state documents depository, and this is in the state documents collection. It is an official roster of South Carolina soldiers, sailors, and Marines from World War I. It lists, you can see over here on the left, list alphabetically. It lists every soldier that they were able to document that had served. It was done 100 years ago, and so it is segregated by white and African American. They call it, colored at the time in the publication, but white and black. We are able to find so many people in here, and when people reach, thanks, Quintel. So anybody that you're looking for, we're usually able to find them, and then we can just do a copy of this and send it off to you. But a really great, rich resource, and I can't speak for anybody else, but anytime I think of a relative's name, I'm like, oh, while I'm researching for somebody else, I'm like, let me look and see if so-and-so is in there. And so it's kind of fun to find our own family's information. And Hannah, thanks, Hannah. She put all of the information and what it meant for this World War I record and where they did. So American Expeditionary Forces, a lot of these South Carolina soldiers served in. And we also have, that leads us to a resource I don't use often, but we do have it, and we're welcome to let y'all come see it. It's the World War records of the 1st Division of AEF, the American Expeditionary Forces, and it has operation records, field notes, battle information, citations of service, and it even included some French and German records that relate to the service and the records. This isn't just South Carolina, but because South Carolina participated in the AEF and a lot of the records, you might find a relative in these papers. And if you're looking for some rich information, there is an index, and you can search by last name, and it references and tells you where to go find it. But here are some great examples of Sergeant Charles Burke in Battery A, Field Artillery, in France, June 2nd, 1918, and talks about his cool under fire during the heavy bombardment. And if that was a relative, I would love to have that information and to include in my family history. Okay. And just more information of kind of secondary information and research about what that was for. So in addition to the newspapers, don't forget we do have the newspapers that Hannah mentioned to you, and we can find all kinds of information about World War II service people, men and women at the time. But we, like the World War I volumes, we have the official roster of service people for World War II. It's like fewer than 10 volumes, but it lists almost everybody that served from South Carolina. So a wonderful resource. And it also, excuse me, gives you some wonderful information about when they joined the service and when they were honorably discharged and what they did. And all of these things mean something. And there's a directory in the beginning that tells you what that was. And this was just a relative that my uncle that I looked up, and it tells me the ship that he served on because he was in the Navy. So that one was kind of a neat one. We have so many federal documents, publications about U.S. Service in the war. And so Hannah pulled out just some awesome examples that we can research names. And I think, Hannah, you might have mentioned it, but Ms. Foster, you were asking about, let's see, War of 1812. Okay, pardon me, I thought you said Spanish American. So here's just some more resources that we're able to tap into to help you. So one thing we always try to do is refer y'all to other fantastic libraries and archives around the state. If you come and ask us a question and you know, we cover everything that we're able to access and share with you, and we know that it's great to send you on to Department of Archives down the road to continue your research, or it might be a local public library's history room that's going to be rich in information based on what you're asking. There's genealogy societies that you can reach out to and that sort of thing. Department of Archives and History, which is a separate agency than our state library, they have been digitizing a lot of records. So if you're out of state, you might be able to access some of this online. And they have marriage certificates, muster rolls, payroll, pension applications, records of Confederate veterans, land plats, wills, etc. So if you were here on their website, you can click on Research and Genealogy, and it would take you to their online records index and some other information. And you can also call them and consult with them to see what's available online or what you have to come see in person, because the vast majority of what they have is in print and microfilm that's in original records. And like I said, don't forget your county libraries and museums and genealogy groups. Miss Foster, who is one of our attendees today, I really appreciate your coming today. She is going to, we're doing an African American genealogy program series, and Miss Foster is going to be our next speaker on July 6th. I'll pull it up in just a moment, but I wanted to share that she is part of a group called Genealogy Just Ask, and she's in the upstate, and that's a group that Miss Foster, you can correct me, but I believe you can ask her questions through her website. And do you also do paid research?
Yes, I do.
Great. Let me pull up, let me show you the last slide, and then I'd love to pull up your slide so that people know about the talk that you're going to do. So if y'all ever have any questions from us, you can easily contact us night and day, reference at statelibrary.sc.gov, and we can get back to you. There's other ways you can do chat, email, this is email, phone calls, visiting in person. And Hannah was the lead speaker today, and she's one of our public services librarians. Here's her email. And then I'm also in the department, I'm the director, and here's my email. And please do reach out to us anytime. We would love to help you. And if y'all have a moment, I want to show you the next talk that we're going to do. Let me see if I can pull that up quickly. Okay. Now, I don't know if y'all can see this. Let me see. Can you see African American genealogy webinar? Let me see if I can share. No, thank you. Let me do a new share. How about now?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you, Hannah. This is the talk Ms. Foster's going to do, and this is part of, I think it's going to be a really great talk in a few weeks. And it's beginner strategies for African American genealogy. So please join us for that. And let's see, Hannah, you look like you were fielding the questions pretty well. Let's see, thank you for doing that. Thanks, Mr. Epps. You're at the Spartanburg County Library. Let's see. Great. Does it look like we, so Ms. Weathers asked, is there anything, oh, Ms. Foster, yes, I could share the transcript with you gladly. And
Okay.
Great. We will also upload it to the our YouTube channel, and I can share it out with all of y'all that registered. It'll just take us a few weeks to be able to do that. Thanks for asking that. Ms. Weathers asked, is there anything on South Carolina soldiers in the War of 1812? I had a visitor in our South Carolina room looking for one of his ancestors, maybe the archives. Good. Thanks, Hannah, for interesting. Great question. Yeah, so our collection is so big, I don't know off the top of my head, so that's something that we can look up and find out what we do have on 1812, War of 1812. Let's see. That's great. World War II official roster. I know somebody was really thinking ahead to be able to document all that information in one place. So it's a really great resource to have. So maybe one day when it's when we could get it digitized, would be a good one to share out. Thanks, Mr. Epps. And Mr. Epps and Quintel up at Oconee County Libraries. And I know, let's see, there's another librarian here from Lawrence. We love working together and sharing information, so we can get you connected with the next person. Like I said, they're going to have some great resources that we don't have, and we may have something that they don't have. So we all love to kind of collaborate any chance that we get. Emily, thanks for asking about if this event will be posted on YouTube and past events. So we have the things that we're presenting ourselves. We are doing the Discover the State Library, and there are two past talks that we've done this year. One is on researching historical newspapers, and another one is on researching civil rights materials with South Carolina State Library resources. So those are available. And Hannah, could you pull up the YouTube page to show them that, if you don't mind? It's down at the bottom of our home page, if y'all are ever looking for that. It's great. So we will post it. We haven't recorded every one of the African American genealogy webinars. It just depended on the speaker's preference, but we will be adding one or two of those out of the several. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Mr. X. I assumed you were at the library. I apologize. That sounds really interesting. Duncan Park Stadium. And so you're writing a book, and we would love to purchase your book. So any of you that are writing South Carolina history, some content about South Carolina, please let us know, and you can send us the Amazon link or however. We also accept donations. That's how we try to add to our collections. So thanks for letting us know that. I'll keep an eye out, and please email us when it's done. Congratulations. Yes, we can put our emails in the chat. One here. Thanks for asking such good questions. Great. Book will be out fall 2023. Wonderful. Thank you, Hannah. Just to show you where all Hannah's got the link there, and you can come down to our YouTube page and just this thing. All of these researching historical newspapers. We have different talks. I don't know if you can see what I'm showing, but you can access all of those things. Thanks for adding the link in there. Well, that's what we had to share this time. If y'all ever have an idea about, you're like, oh, I wish I knew such and such, we would love to be able to do a webinar on the information in our collections. We get the question maybe 5 times a day. What are y'all? What is the state library? So we were trying to work on like, oh, we need to do a better job on sharing what we have and making sure people know that they can come and use these resources. So that's the main goal for doing these 1-hour webinars throughout the year. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much for coming. I hope y'all learned something, and we learn when we're putting this information together. Hannah did the heavy lifting on all of this, and so I appreciate everything Hannah did, and we learned a lot. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming. That's neat. I think there was a Senator Waldrop too, that probably up into the 1990s, 2000s from Anderson. That's great. Well, we can stick around another minute or two if y'all have anything to ask. I guess we could search for the World War. Let me just see if there's any War of 1812. Let's see. We're also part of a consortium. So every county isn't part of our SC Lens consortium, but about half of the counties in South Carolina are. So you can, if you were in Lancaster or Anderson, different counties that are participants, you can have things sent over to your county library. You can request it from us. Now, some things are older materials that we don't circulate, but there are plenty of things that we do circulate. You see there, just within SC Lens, there's a roster of the General Society of the War of 1812, and that may be at another library. Let me see. That's at the York Rock Hill branch, and if you haven't been there before, they have a fantastic genealogy collection. So that's one place you could go and get that information. And another register of the General Society, it might be the same one, just phrased a little bit different. and that's at the Anderson Library. Let's see. Published in 1972. Has biographical sketches of various people in the war. Lots of rich resources. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to try to save some of these things so I can share them with you later. I need to write out directions because each time let's see. Great, thank you. Ms. Foster, did you have any questions?
No, I really liked this webinar. It was really put together really well. And I see a lot of things that I can look for.
Great. Well, Hannah put it together and I helped, so I just did a little tiny bit. So it's all Hannah. Thank you for saying that.
Really appreciate this.
You're welcome. And thanks for participating in our a bunch of our programs lately and for being one of the speakers coming up. So,
you know, I came there when I used to live in Hopkins. It was a long time ago, and I've learned so much from these.
That's great.
I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, I look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks.
Yes, it'll be good.
Great. Well, I appreciate all of y'all coming today. See if I can. I'm going to stop screen sharing. And anybody else, I appreciate y'all sticking around. Be glad to answer any other questions you might have. And save transcript. See you in July. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. McFadden. Great. Well, I'm gonna turn off the recording and say goodbye. And y'all please join us for the next talk. And keep in touch and ask us any questions that we can help with. We'll do our best. Have a great summer. Thank you.